So thank you very much for joining us again this evening for what is turning into quite a regular series of evening catch-ups and opportunities for us to engage with clubs and leagues here at Berks and Bucks. The goal around this one is to look at what I've called contingency planning, which is probably a bit of a dramatic term for it, but around planning for the 2020-21 season. Over the course of the evening, there's three main areas that I want to try and touch on, which is County FA updates, just around some of the information that's come out over the last week around affiliation for next season. Forward planning, which is going to be the bulk of what we're going to be discussing, which is around what things leagues need to be considering ahead of 2021. And then try and close it with an open forum so that if you've got any questions that have come up which maybe haven't been covered in the slides or just around what's happening at the moment, it gives you an opportunity to ask us. We've got Liz and John on the call, so we're represented across all aspects of Berks and Bucks, so hopefully we'll be able to help you out. And then what I'm hoping for this evening is a lot of discussion, collaboration, and it'd be nice to come out of it with a bit of I said a unified approach, but just an idea of what different leagues have planned, so that we've got a little bit of consistency, hopefully around start dates or competition formats for different eventualities. What I'm not expecting is that every league's going to know the answers to everything at this stage and have 3 or 4 different scenarios planned out depending on the start date for next season. But as I said, it might just give an opportunity to share ideas and make sure that when we are ready to come back, we're not tripping over each other or offering completely different variations on football within the same part of the county. So moving on then to the County FA updates, and you should have seen most of these have come out as part of the weekly updates that Steph has been sending out. First is that you're probably aware we have put the club affiliation league sanction dates back to the 1st of August, which is quite a lot later than it would be in any given regular season, certainly. Flip side of that is there will be no formal deadline for affiliation, with the caveat that every team must be affiliated before they're allowed to take part in affiliated football. Obviously, we had hoped we'd be in a position to open this sooner, but given the amount of uncertainty around arrangements for next season at this stage, we felt we're not in a position to be able to open affiliation in June as we had initially been planning. Part of that is that we're conscious we need to be sending a consistent message. Now, the current guidance from the government doesn't include any mention of grassroots sports and team sports resuming anytime soon. So we felt that by opening the affiliation, it might give the wrong impression that we're actually gearing up for football to start imminently. And it would therefore cloud this message that's coming out from the FA and from the government. So just to reiterate and clarify on that, grassroots football activities do remain suspended until further notice, and the County FA and the FA are not encouraging clubs to explore ways to return to, quote, organised football at this time. Obviously, with the latest updates that the government announced a week ago on Sunday, one-on-one sports are beginning to get back up and running to some extent, and the FA has clarified that one-on-one adult coaching is allowed. However, one-on-one coaching of under 18s is not permitted at this time, and that's because there's no way to match the government guidance that you're only allowed to meet one person from another household with the FA's safeguarding guidance that any activity involving under 18 must have at least two adults present at any one time. The coach can only meet with one person, so they can't have a second adult there when they're coaching an under 18. As and when this does get relaxed more, further guidance, of course, will be issued when appropriate. And if we are in a position that we're guaranteed to start the league season in August or September, obviously we will bring that date forward. We just felt putting a date a little bit further into the distance gives us a little bit of clarity at this time. The other big news that's come out around affiliation is that around fees. And we're pleased that we're able to offer club affiliation for next season free of charge. So that will cover the club affiliation fee, the team affiliation fee, and the club's public liability insurance. The only thing that a club will have to pay for this season to the County FA is personal accident insurance. League sanction remains frozen at the same price it was last season, which is £30, plus then the public liability insurance, where there is a £1 increase, which has been passed on to us by Bluefin. The goal of offering free affiliation really is to try and encourage participation to return at the highest levels possible. And on the basis of this, in turn, then supports leagues and referees financially, we felt that given our own financial situation, it was more important to prioritise club affiliation fees at this time, because that is really what keeps everything, or gets everything else moving and brings in participation and gets people back out on the pitch. Ultimately, if leagues and referees benefit from higher participation of clubs, we felt that if we had to draw a line in the sand, this was the fairest place to do so. The next update then around affiliation for next season is just going to be around county cups. So our current intention, fingers crossed, is to run county cups as normal in the 2021 season. However, that is going to be reliant on competition starting no later than the 1st of November. If we can't start our county cups by the 1st of November, we don't think it's going to be feasible to run them without having a potential serious negative impact on league competitions. If we were to try and run a full season starting in November or December or January, and we then got hit by any kind of poor weather similar to what we saw in the season just gone, it's going to create a huge backlog of fixtures and really put additional competitions such as the leagues in a tight situation. Therefore, we feel that it's our role as county to help facilitate everybody else playing. If that means that we have to suspend our competitions for a season, it's appropriate for us to do so. We will hope to provide confirmation status to the county cups ahead of the affiliation window opening on the 1st of August. And again, that is just because we hope that we'll have a much better idea around how and when football should be in a place to restart by that time. Player registrations, just as a final update before we get into the main body of the presentation. 2019-20 registrations will expire across the board on 31st of May. At that time, clubs will be able to detach players without the leagues having to manually deregister them in the whole game system. And clubs will also be able to attach players and assign them to 2020-21 teams in preparation for the start of next season. What they can't do, obviously, then is submit that registration to the leagues, because that date will be set by yourselves when you set up the league season in the whole game system for the player registration requirements. It's just then a quick reminder that from the 21-22 season, it will be mandatory for all players to be registered via the whole game system and have a unique email address. The FA is going to be introducing some new guidelines or procedures around how that can be done in a pain-free, or hopefully pain-free manner for youth players, for players under the age of 16 who have to be linked to a parent. So for youth leagues, say hold off on perhaps issuing some updates around the emails to your leagues until you have that. But it is an opportunity perhaps this summer to look at introducing that as a league rule, that is part of your registration requirements. Help get everybody on board ahead of that 21-22 start date. Also conscious from having done a bit of analysis over the last couple of weeks and months that some leagues have only been half applying registrations through the whole game system. This is primarily for the youth leagues who are adopting it across certain age groups, but not all. And again, we'd encourage you to adopt it across the board for all age groups. As we said, from the 21-22 season, it will be mandatory anyway across all age groups. Bringing it in now, particularly at this kind of time when a lot of people have more time because we're not able to be out socialising, gives an opportunity to perhaps get a bit of a jump start on some of that administration that goes into collecting all of that data and getting it all up on the whole game system. Before I move then into the main part and looking ahead, Liz, have there been any comments or questions, or are there any hands raised? Because I can't see that, unfortunately.
Yeah, as far as I can see, there's no hands raised. There has been one question, and I think we've probably answered it in some form, but we'll just clarify this. We have clubs in our league from 5 different county FAs. Would it not be best to open up affiliation for all counties on the same date? I see some counties have started affiliations on the 1st of June and one county is already open. So I don't know whether you want to comment any more on that, Alistair.
The only thing I can really say about that is that it is down to each county FA to set their affiliation dates. I'm aware of some counties close to us who have opened it at the earliest possible opportunities. I also know some counties in the area who have just not given any kind of indication about when it will be open, and it is just TBC. There's not too much more we can say other than it comes down to each county. We've made a decision that we felt was best based on the information that we've got. Other counties have obviously gone down a slightly different route on that. Liz, was there any? If there may, there may not be any more questions, but is there anything else you wanted to come in just around affiliation or finances around for next season?
Yeah, I mean, I think from our point of view, I mean, we're really pleased to be able to put some funding into supporting grassroots clubs. We are, we're proud of the fact that we're able to do that, and we're able to offer it practically for free. Obviously, that personal accident insurance is an obligation for each team that affiliates. I think just coming back on the point around the 1st of August, for us and for me in particular, I feel very strongly about it that we have to put a very, very firm message out to all of our member clubs to look after their players and look after their members. And that's the reason why we've done it. 1st of June indicates, if we open the affiliation, it does indicate that we're allowing football to continue. There is nothing more, believe me, than we would like to see football back up and running as quickly as possible, but we have to do it safely, and that's the reason why we've put the 1st of August.
Perfect, thank you very much. As I said, if we are in a position where we can open it earlier, we'll be the happiest people to be able to bring that forward. But I think it's as we said, we feel it's the most sensible approach at this point in time. So looking forward then to 2021, this is where I'm almost planning to pass this over to yourselves to contribute at this point, mainly because I don't have the answers. There's one question I'm not going to ask, which is when are we going to be able to get back up and running? Because if you knew that, you should be off making money as the fortune teller at this stage. What I'm going to do then is pose a series of questions which I'm hoping will spark discussion. Also, give us an idea and understanding of where leagues are, which will help us plan our support going forward. But also, it may prompt some considerations or some thoughts that maybe haven't been considered yet, just as we try to navigate the next few months and planning for next season. So the first question I'm going to ask, and again, this is where please raise a hand, put something in chat, or if we're able to manage it, unmute yourself and let me know what you're thinking. First question is, how much lead time from the release of lockdown do you need to launch the competition? So in effect, if Boris Johnson were to come on the news tomorrow and say, we found a miracle cure, coronavirus has been solved, we're able to release the lockdown on Saturday, how many weeks, how many days, weeks, how much time do you think it's realistic to be able to actually kick off the season? Equally, if you're one of the leagues that does have a start date planned for mid-September, how early do you think you need to decide or make that decision whether that's going to be feasible or not, and make a call that you can't proceed with the planned start date? I can see something in the chat. Oh, that was people leaving the message. Ron, do you want to unmute yourself and see you put your hand up? There we go, yeah.
Hi, Alistair. Right. We've got. Sorry, the first question was how much time do we need? I think that's really. We've got to think about how much time the clubs need to actually find out how long it takes them to get grounds, pitches, etc. So we're pretty much reliant upon them. but my estimate would be if we started as normal, our Sunday League in September, they would probably need about 4 weeks notice to actually get up and running and playing as normal. And do you want to know about contingency plans?
I'll probably come on to that over the next couple of slides. But just from our point of view, in terms of getting an understanding that whether it's next week, next month, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months down the line, as soon as we get that go ahead, we can then start planning that. Actually, it's likely to then be four weeks or so before we're, or I think 4 weeks before we kick off.
Clubs are itching to get going, and they're trying to put things in place. So I would guess about a month.
Brilliant. Anybody else fancy coming in and just contributing? Oh, did I hear somebody had unmuted?
Yeah. So on the chat, we've got EBFA have got are saying 4 to 6 weeks to give the kids a chance to get some training in.
Yeah.
Got a hand up.
That's very fair. And I'll kind of come on to the communication with clubs a bit later on, but I think it's definitely a very fair some point that it's not as much as we're working or looking to kind of have this conversation with yourselves around how long you need as a league to get everything up and running. What we also need to make sure is that clubs have that opportunity to get up and running, and a lot of clubs are going to be in a position at the moment where finances are tight. They're not been able to run the fundraising events they may otherwise have done over the summer, or they may have players who aren't sure whether they're coming back because they're not sure what their situation is going to be. So they will need lead time as well. Seen a couple of hands come up. So were you going to come in with something else, Liz?
No, what I was going to say is that we've had in the chat another 3 leagues all saying 4 weeks minimum.
4 weeks minimum. Okay. Alan, I see you've got your hands up. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Have I done that?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you.
I think, I spoke to you earlier this week about AGMs, etc. Not really a lot of point having an AGM at the moment because we don't really know what our clubs are actually doing. We've got a meeting on the 1st of June, the management meeting, where we go from there. Clubs aren't in a hurry to do much at the moment, which is natural because they've got a lot more things to worry about, haven't they? So we're having to play it by ear all the way through. But I think we really need about 4 weeks once they tell us. We can get clubs can get players registered from the 1st of July, can't they, really, if they want to?
Yeah.
But, as for playing games, we haven't got a clue yet. So I think we've just got to wait and see where we go.
I think that's fair. Harry, did you want to unmute yourself as well? I can see you've got the hand raised on the.
Yeah, I just started on the chat as well, but I think from our standpoint, we need 6 weeks just so the teams can get themselves together, get players registered. We then got to go through the whole processes of filtering those people into various divisions. And in my experience, if I don't start that by the 1st of August, I'm really backed up.
Okay. I've got that kind of plays into the next question. I can see Richard's got his hand raised, and I'll come back to you in 1 second, Richard. But I'll just put the next question up because it links in quite nicely with what Harry said, which is what is the latest date, or the latest date you could run a quote regular season. But whilst everyone's thinking about that, Richard, do you want to unmute yourself, and I'll you can chip in. Oh, you're still muted, Richard. Let me see if I can do it from my end, if not. Well, there you go. Yep, you're unmuted.
Okay. Yeah, if you are aware that we in Aylesbury, the management committee there have made the unusual decision that they want to complete the cup competitions for 1920 before they start the league season. Yeah. Now. Yep. That means no club can start 2021 until that's finished. Now, we've worked out that if the go-ahead's given, it will take 4 weeks to complete the cup competitions because there's 6 cup competitions, so there's 6 finals to play, and 10 semi-finals to play. So that's the minimum before they can even start, yeah? So a league season can start. The other strange thing as well is, you're probably aware that there's been a change in Buckinghamshire, that the 4 district councils have now gone, and as of the 1st of April, Buckinghamshire Council has replaced the 4, so it's a unitary now. And in Aylesbury, we've got a situation where... Pardon?
Show participants, is that it? Oh, it's all gone quiet now.
Oh, I'm not sure who that was, but I think that was someone having some technical issues there. Carry on, Richard.
I'm still here, Alice. Yeah, Buckinghamshire is now covers the area dealt with by the 4 district council. Now in Aylesbury, we've got the situation there where local council pitches, which a lot of teams use, were maintained by 4 members of staff. As of the advent of the new Buckinghamshire Council, there is only now 1 person dealing with the pitches, which is a massive job in even cutting the grass, because all the equipment the district had. So it's an unusual situation here. If the go-ahead's given, we're not sure what's going to happen with local authority pitches, because there is also a recruitment ban until the end of September, so there's no recruitment of any staff to any departments until the 1st of September. So for Aylesbury District Saturday League, it's very up in the air about when, if the go-ahead was, say, given the 4th of July or the beginning of August, how long it would take for certainly council pitches to come back into use.
Okay, that's interesting. John Wood is on the call, so what I'll do is probably ask John to perhaps get in touch with Bucks Council or with yourself, and just kind of, we'll see what we can do to help out in that situation.
Without going off, too much on a tangent, Richard, as Alistair said, happy to pick that up separately. I know the county council are going through what they call a devolution process, which basically means that they're obviously looking to see who is going to manage those pitches moving forward, whether that's going to be local parish councils or whoever. But yeah, I'm happy to pick that up separately with you.
Cheers, John. Appreciate that. Charlie, I can see you've had your hand raised. Do you want to unmute yourself and just so you can come on?
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, just a couple of things on there. Emma's time, I think realistically it couldn't be less than 4 weeks, taking everything into consideration. And the latest we could run, I believe, because we're hoping to have 3 divisions of 12, and to get in those 22 league games plus cup competitions plus county cups, I don't think we could run as normal after October. So I think realistically, unless they say we can start, the government say from September, we could then start our competition in October, but it would be pushing it. But after that, I think we'd have to have we're looking at possibly, it's only a suggestion at the moment, is if we go from November, we would have to, instead of having 3 leagues of 12, we'd probably go into 4 leagues of 9, and so cutting the league games down.
Yeah,
I think just for 1 season. I think that's only just it's just an option we're looking at. That's North Berks Football League, by the way.
Brilliant, thanks, Charlie. That's very much the next part I was going to come on to, which is, and I've seen a couple of comments come through on the chat around different start dates and potentially January of next year. I mean, the question before was around, let's say, traditional format of home and away for adult leagues, or the formats you've been running for previous seasons. But that takes me on quite nicely to the next stage, which is around consideration of how does the format need to change, or would it change based on a September start? So perhaps for some leagues that may be six to 8 weeks later than normal. A November start, could you fit in a normal season and try and condense it from November to May rather than say September to April? And then what happens if actually we're not in a position to be able to start grassroots football until January of 2020.
Well, can I come in again?
Yeah, come back in, Charlie.
Oh, sorry, I don't want to grab all of everything, but looking at those three options, quite simply, really, September would be okay if we could start in September, because that's what we normally do, so that'd be fine. November, as I said, I think we would look to have a reduced number of teams in the leagues. And January, I think if we went for January, I think we could do it, but it may be a situation where everybody just plays each other once and not home and away. I think that's the only way we could do it. Because we'd also have a cup competitions, because I think cup competitions are very important because, with finals, etc., they do bring in quite a bit of money.
Yeah,
so, so I think we would like to run ours, but we would have to have a very reduced league programme. Possibly just, as I say, probably just everybody will play each other once. That'd be it.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Charlie.
Alistair, just a couple on the chat.
Yeah,
we've got just something to bear in mind is the end of September would be the latest for some of the youth leagues because A levels have an impact. The other thing that's coming out across a couple of the chats is maybe the option to drop the trophy events. So EBFA, for example, November, December start is probably the latest. By dropping the trophy events, in January, they reduce the number of teams in the sections or divisions, or they'll play each other once.
Yeah, and I think that's very much the kind of January then becomes a little bit of a cut-off, doesn't it, in terms of you just run a half season. As flippant perhaps as that sounds as a solution, but it kind of marks that. It gives that bit of a marker. I'm going to throw another slide up or aspect up, which has already been touched on to some extent, and Charlie said put it very, very well. Obviously, League Cups has a huge impact in terms of being an income generator. But when you are looking at the impact and potential different start dates, you do need to then consider what that impact is going to be on the League Cups, potential participation of your members in standalone cup competitions. And I know we've got a couple of people on the call who've been involved in the likes of the Ascot and Ascot and Asterix and Fields and District Cup, Maidenhead, Norfolkins, Slough Town, and so forth. And then if you are doing a reduced season, what then is the impact around transfer windows, player eligibility for cup finals and so forth, and just be conscious about what that knock-on impact may be on some of the other league rules. Seeing if there's any additional comments or if anybody wants to chime in on any thoughts just around those aspects.
We have got one hand up, Alistair.
Okay, perfect. Whose hand is up? Oh, Ron, did you want to come back in, Ron? Ron, either can see your hand is raised, but if you want to unmute it or if you want to lower the hand if you didn't want to come back in.
Sorry, no, I'm in.
Okay, perfect.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
It's great that leagues have got contingency plans, and we've also got contingency plans, and they're also going to have a knock-on effect on league cups, etc., as you've mentioned. However, one of the things that we talk about and decide at an AGM is rule changes and constitutions of league.
Yeah.
My question is it in these exceptional circumstances, is it necessary to actually have an AGM, and can we not just carry on with what we've got at the moment, as long as all clubs are in agreement?
So you wouldn't be able to start the new season without having had an AGM. Quite a few leagues have come to us and said, can they postpone it until they've got a bit more of an understanding as to what's happening, rather than have it on the appointed date or by the end of June as they normally would. And certainly we're very flexible around that, happy to kind of support leagues go through that. As you say, clubs, you have to decide on the constitution of divisions at an AGM, so you would still have to have it. Those leagues who are incorporated or limited companies would also have to make sure that they hold an AGM. I think it's within 6 months of the end of their financial year, is a legal requirement. So there's a couple of different aspects to consider there.
So under the, as I mentioned, exceptional circumstances, would the FA not grant us permission not to have an AGM if all of the member clubs were happy not to do so?
If they I would say
I'm just thinking if we're trying to start in September, we get from August. It would be much easier just to run with what we've got rather than actually having to have an AGM to sort out constitution, etc.
So my gut is saying no, but I will have a conversation with someone at the FA just to try and get a bit of guidance from them.
I'm just trying to make it easier for everybody concerned. So we can
absolutely.
play football.
I completely understand where you're coming from with it. I've just got my governance hat, which is I've got my governance head and my heart telling me it's easier to common sense would say you should be able to avoid it if everybody's in agreement. But I just
let's get common sense to rule, shall we?
It would be nice every now and then. I think there's part of me that's going, there's so much that is done at an AGM in terms of election of officers, election of new members, start and end date of the season, and the constitution of divisions. I'd imagine the answer from the FA will still be they would expect a league to still go through that process. However, we would be able to support in terms of doing it as an online AGM, which could be done relatively quickly if none of those issues are contested.
Okay, but I'd appreciate you finding out for me, please.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you.
I'm going to come to Charlie next because I can see your hands up on the webcam. Oh, you need to unmute yourself, Charlie. I can't hear you.
There we go.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, we're hoping to have our AGM in June via emails. Not quite sure how our General Secretary is going to do all that, but he is going to do it. And then we are going to, as soon as we get a date for when we can restart, we are going to hold an extraordinary general meeting to discuss league formations and any change of rules. So it's all going to do the official bit by email and then do the extra bit as an extraordinary general meeting later, if that helps.
I think that's a great idea. As you say, you can do some of the boring annual admin side of things, which again is normally uncontested around election of officers. Exactly. You could do that either through an electronic meeting or see if you can do it by paper, and then have a separate meeting once we know when the league season starts up to agree all of the practicalities of how the season's going to look. No, I think that's fair. Do I see a hand raised from Alan?
Nothing to do with our league, but Richard said earlier about Aylesbury playing their cup competitions before the season starts. How does that go with registration of players if the player registrations end on the 31st of May?
So the FA will allow the player registrations for those teams to, it will have to be managed offline, shall we say. There's normally something in the league rules that if a cup match is postponed or gets abandoned and replayed, then only those players eligible at the first fixture date would be eligible to play it when it's rescheduled. So that'll be something that the league will be managing in terms of what the practicality of those player registrations look like.
Okay, thank you. That's useful for another year. Thank you.
Yep. And Harry, I can see your hands up as well on the chat.
Yeah, Charlie said the same as we're going to do. We're going to run a cut down AGM virtual one on 11th of June, get the everything but the constitutions and the league start dates done, agree with the meeting that we will then run a special general meeting, hopefully a real one as opposed to a virtual one, when we have that information. So saying the same thing, just get all the to remove the stuff out of the way so that we can get to a flying start when we're allowed to.
No, I agree. That saves me kind of covering that later on as well. Which takes us, I guess, on to the next big question, which is what happens after January. We all kind of said January's we can make sense of it if we start in January, kind of run a half season perhaps, rather than have home and away. Go with a system where everybody just plays each other once. And this is one which is probably, there is no straight or easy answer for this, but around if actually it's February or March that grassroots sport's able to come back with full participation. And it maybe it's something that doesn't necessarily need to be discussed at this stage, as it is so far in the future, but it is just there as something perhaps to have in the back of your minds, or as on a post-it somewhere, just as a long-term contingency plan. Obviously, I think I speak for all of us when I say we really hope it doesn't come to that, but it is something that maybe just needs to be planned for. And I know that some leagues have talked around doing trophy events, or just play a Champions League style competition. I spoke with the National Leagues manager for the FA, and he's come up with a circular league proposal, which is in the back of his mind as a potential option, where effectively your little mini divisions rotate every couple of weeks, so that you have a variation in who you're playing. But it's an opportunity really to get a bit creative and a bit innovative and play around with how football looks. Have an experiment for a few months perhaps. I'm not going to dwell on that any further at this stage though. And the final question, I think we've covered a lot, but it's just the one to have in the back of the mind, which is how involved are clubs currently, and how involved should they be? From our point of view, probably in the same way that we're looking to have a regular series of meetings with yourselves as the leagues. I know a lot of leagues are having similar kinds of meetings with their clubs to be trying to pose the same kind of questions to them about what type of format that they want the competition to look like, how much lead-in and planning time do they need. But I'd be interested actually to know how many meetings or what the kind of engagement is that leagues are having at the moment with the clubs, because we've run a limited number of sessions across the county for all of our clubs. To be honest, we probably get more engagement from the meetings we had with yourselves as the leagues. So you're really interested to hear what kind of comments the clubs are coming back with, and what their kind of engagement has been with yourselves at this stage. So anyone who's happy to throw their hat in the ring on that one. Harry, do you want to go ahead? I think you're unmuted.
Yeah, one of the things that came up in one of our meetings was we have started an open forum, which is open to teams, clubs in our league or any league, where people can share what the issues are, and that's become quite well attended. And one of the reasons for we will have another one of those after our AGM on the 11th of June. So the idea is to just open up and get many ideas on what they're doing from many clubs, and so that's something that we're advertising, and it's separate from the league. It's not you don't have to be in our league, and the members of the committee don't have to be in it. It's just an open football forum.
That's fantastic. If you could actually let us know when some of those are, because we're happy to either attend them if you want us to attend in a formal capacity as a county rep, or even just actually we can not eavesdrop, that's probably not the right word to use, but we would be happy to kind of sit in on those and be there if needed, but to take part and have an understanding of some of those issues.
Yeah, I will get you an invitation. It is informal, and we stress it is informal. Yep. And that we're not there as league representatives. We're just there trying to. Yeah,
in that case, that's probably better for us, because it gives us an ear on the ground.
Exactly. All right, we'll do that for you.
Perfect. Thanks, Harry. Alan, I can see you've got your hand raised. Did you want to come back in?
Me again, Alistair.
That's fine.
I've emailed all our clubs and I'd asked them to let me know by last Friday what their thoughts are, whether they would be coming back or leaving, whatever. Of our 38 clubs, we've so far had one who've definitely said they're not going to play next year. We've had 3 who have said they will let me know by the 31st of May, because I've told all our clubs we want the D forms and the agreements in by the normal date, the 31st of May, because we want to keep things moving. You know, whenever we start, we still want to be proactive and show that we're doing it. I think one of those clubs will stay. I think 2 more will go. So I think we'll lose 3 of our 38. But on the plus side, we've got 5 who want to come in.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
And we could take more, but they're not. They're not step 5 and they're not step 6 with their own ground. So we could have taken more than that, but I don't think that. We might do, because we've got until tomorrow. Clubs will come in tomorrow and say they still want to join. So let's see. But yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah, it's interesting from our end. We certainly had a fair amount of interest from new clubs looking to join us for next season that we've been setting up and trying to get up onto the system, so that when we do open affiliation, they're able to log in as well and go through the same process.
Well, I had one club who resigned, and I think the last time we had this, I told you that we lost one club, but they've come back to me this week and said no, they're going to stay. So
that's good.
There are some positivities about it.
If you can boss or whatever it is that you said or did to help them stay, and definitely be interested in getting.
Yeah, I think I invited their secretary to a barbecue.
Okay. Well, you got business on the call, so if that's what it takes, I'm happy for us to be hosting barbecues when we're out of this. Okay, is there anyone else that anything? I can see in the chat. Phil Spracklin's just given us a little bit of light in the dark and at the end of the tunnel. Today's update, Matt Hancock told Robbie Savage, of all people, that he hopes it won't be necessary to have a vaccine in place before grassroots football can restart. And Professor Chris Whitty says he's definitely hopeful sport will be available well beforehand. So that's definitely the most positive news that I've heard coming out of the government in a while, certainly around football.
Alistair, one more question on the chat. Richard would like to know, he's got a question from some clubs with regards to what grants are available for teams and clubs at grassroots level.
And I was going to sussily throw that one over to Mr. Wood.
Thanks, Al. Hi, Richard. Probably the main fund at the moment that we're pushing is called the Pitch Preparation Fund. So it's basically a fund for any club that maintains in some way a pitch that they are planning to use for next season. It's a fund that is extremely accessible. Applications are taking no more than 5 minutes. For if you have a 1 pitch site, it's £1,500 you can apply for. 2 or 3 pitches, it's £2,500, and 4 pitches, it's £5,000. So that is a fund that we have been pushing quite strongly over the last few weeks. I think in the Berks and Bucks area, we have had over 80 applications now. So clubs are accessing it, which is great news. Over and above that, the other funding that is specifically around the situation that we're in is the Sport England Community Fund, and that will allow clubs to potentially get back some of the costs that they may have incurred as a result of the situation at the moment. So those are the 2 funds that I would kind of strongly recommend, and I'm happy to send you links over for that if need be.
Yeah, I was going to say, John, is there somewhere that I was going to say we've got the recording of our club's forum from last week. Well,
last week. A couple of weeks ago.
Relative at the moment. That is on our website, and also I think there are also dates about upcoming sessions that both the FA and Berks and Bucks are going to be hosting, aren't there? I believe they're
that's right. I think it was also sent round in the club and leagues update that Steph sends round normally on a Friday.
Perfect. If maybe we can probably to include it again in the one that goes around in the next one that's coming around. Right. The comment there from Mark at Thames Valley Prem. Well, Matt Hancock has said that social distancing in change rooms will be challenged. The comment I was just going to make quickly around that is that my understanding is that when we are in a position to start back up again, any of the questions or the concerns around the practicality of the health and safety and hygiene aspect will come down from the FA. I don't think it's going to have to be a case that every league is going to create their own set of policies as to how to manage those kinds of situations locally. Believe that those kind of protocols will come down to us from the FA just to make sure there's a bit of consistency and we're all covered under the same kind of guidance on that. John, I might ask you to go back to Richard separately, just around the other question on that, because it's getting quite, I'm conscious of the time as well. We've only got about 10 minutes before we should be trying to wrap this up. So this is just around the AGM and the special general meetings, which I think we've already covered. So I'm just going to skip over that because we discussed that earlier on. As I said, only a bit of advice is that if you do want to separate them, I'd recommend having the AGM now with the all of the procedural annual stuff around accounts, election of officers, and so forth at this stage in the AGM, including perhaps selection of new clubs. And then once we are aware, when we're able to get up and running, have a special general meeting at that stage just to confirm constitution of divisions, start and end dates, and any changes to the format of the competition. So moving forward, the three bits of kind of three easy statements that I think it kind of boils down to. I hope that this evening hasn't been doom laden. I think it's an important process to go through just to look ahead and be realistic about the situation, particularly when it's almost like listening to two different worlds at the moment when you hear what the scientists are saying and then you hear what the politicians are saying about timeframes moving forward and levels of risk. So I think it's important that we are realistic and we do plan ahead. By all means, and please do continue to plan for a September start and hope for a September start as you would do normally, but just make sure that you have contingencies there if that does get pushed back by a couple of months or into the start of 2021. Also be conscious that if we do start, the earlier we do start, perhaps the more likely it is that season will get broken up again by further lockdowns if it does come back a bit more. Be creative and flexible. Certainly if the later this drags on and the less time we have to play the 2021 season in, the more important it's going to be flexible and creative around how we provide football to our clubs and players for next season. I know that there's a couple of comments that have gone through in the chat just around flexibility of standard code and making sure everything is still compliant with the rules that the FA set down. And I had a chat, like I said, with the National Leagues manager a couple of days ago, and the message coming from him is that the county and that the FA will be flexible on that as well. It is an exceptional circumstance. Don't know how many times in the last few months I've heard the word unprecedented. So if it comes down to we can't play 2 rounds of fixtures home and away and we just play 1 round of fixtures, then I don't think anybody's going to mind too much that technically it's mandatory in standard code that it's home and away. I think we're all got to be flexible around situations like that. Just to come back on Liz quickly around the question, has standard code been verified, particularly size 3 ball for the under 10s? My understanding is that is still going through FA Council, but I believe they had a meeting today, so Liz may be able to confirm that in a minute. And then the final message kind of moving forward, again, is just that reiteration just around the engagement with the county and with your clubs. The more we understand about what leagues are planning moving forward, the more we're able to tailor our support and make sure we're able to provide the right information at the right time and the right resources at the right time. It's been great to see so many people on again this evening and across the board when we've been having these kinds of evening meetings. We're looking to pick them up across the summer, and we've been putting together engagement plans all the way through August particularly around volunteers in the clubs and with the leagues, and induction sessions for new members and so forth. So please continue to jump on these, because it really helps us get an understanding about what's happening on the ground. And equally, I think it's important that leagues engage with their clubs, probably going through similar kinds of processes of pulling representatives in to make sure you've got an understanding about how much time clubs need to be able to prepare, what their thoughts are around some of the ideas for different formats for next season, and to make sure that when we do come back, it's in the best possible structure for the clubs and for the circumstances. Question quickly from Richard: does Bluefin personal accident cover a player struck down by COVID-19? At the moment, I've only got last season's personal accident policy. That does not have any kind of reference to a virus, respiratory disease, pneumonia, or anything like that. And I think part of the challenge of that is how do you prove where they contracted it. So I don't believe the personal accident does cover that as it currently stands. However, they may well be putting something else in place to support that. I don't know at this stage, unfortunately. And that kind of concludes the formal part and the presentation part.